Please, Mr. Osterfield, there must be another way. Aloan Blackwood's voice trembled as she stood in the imposing office of Thorne Osterfield, her fingers clutching the edge of her worn cardigan. The man behind the mahogany desk didn't even look up from the contract. There isn't. Your father owes me $600,000, Miss Blackwood. This arrangement is already more generous than he deserves. Aloan felt the room spin. Just 3 days ago, she'd been painting in their small Maine cottage, worrying about her father's increasingly erratic behavior. Then came the midnight knock, Thorne Osterfield's security team, with documents proving her father had gambled away everything and offered his only daughter as collateral. My father isn't well. He couldn't have known what he was signing. The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Thorne finally looked up, his steel-gray eyes devoid of emotion. He knew exactly what he was doing. Raymond Blackwood has been conning people for years. This time, he conned the wrong person. Aloan flinched. She'd spent her life defending her father, making excuses for his absences, his gambling. She'd even dropped out of art school to care for him when his health declined. But this betrayal cut deeper than anything before. What exactly do you want from me? She asked, hating how her voice cracked. A cold smile touched Thorne's lips. 1 year of service as my personal assistant. You'll live at my estate. All your expenses covered. When the year is up, your father's debt is cleared. And if I refuse, then I'll press charges for fraud, and your father will spend the rest of his life in prison. Your choice, Miss Blackwood. The cruel simplicity of it made her stomach turn. I need to speak with my father first. By all means. Thorne gestured toward the door. My driver will take you home. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Hours later, Aloan confronted her father in their small kitchen, the contract clutched in her shaking hand. How could you? She whispered, tears streaming down her face. You used me as a bargaining chip? Raymond Blackwood, once handsome but now haggard and pale, couldn't meet her eyes. You don't understand, Ellie. Osterfield was going to kill me. The people I borrowed from, they're dangerous. So you sold your daughter instead? The words burned her throat. It's just a job. 1 year working for a rich man, living in a mansion. I was protecting you. Aloan laughed bitterly. Protecting me? By signing me away to a man who calls you a con artist? What aren't you telling me, Dad? Her father's face crumpled. I've made mistakes. But Osterfield has a vendetta. His family and ours, there's history. What history? Mom died when I was 3. You've told me nothing about her family. Raymond turned away. Some things are better left buried, Ellie. Not anymore. She slammed her palm on the table. I deserve the truth if I'm going to clean up your mess. Raymond's shoulders sagged. Your mother, Eleanor, she came from money. Old money. There was a falling out before you were born. She chose me over them. And Osterfield knows this. He knows enough to hate me. But not everything. Not about you. He reached for her hand. Please, Ellie. If you don't do this, they'll take everything. The house, your mother's things. Aloan pulled away, touching the antique locket around her neck, the only thing she had of her mother's. Inside was a faded picture of Eleanor Blackwood, her smile hauntingly similar to Aloan's own. I'll do it, she said finally. But not for you. For Mom's memory and this house. The next morning, as Aloan packed a small suitcase, her father hovered in the doorway, looking suddenly old. There's something you should know about Thorne Osterfield, he said. He wasn't always like this. There was a time when the Osterfields were known for their philanthropy, not their ruthlessness. What changed? Loss. Scandal. The usual rich people problems. He hesitated. Be careful around his business partner, Garrett Lindstrom. The man has been calling me for years, long before these gambling debts. I should have seen the trap. Aloan paused. What trap? Before her father could answer, a car horn sounded outside. Thorne's driver was early. Just be careful, Ellie. Don't trust any of them. And whatever happens. I'm sorry. She took one last look at her childhood bedroom, slipped her mother's locket beneath her blouse, and walked out, the weight of her father's secrets heavy on her shoulders. In the sleek black car, Aloan stared at the contract in her lap. Assistant to Thorne Osterfield. 1 year of her life to pay for her father's sins. As the Maine coastline disappeared behind her, she made a silent promise to herself. She would discover what connected her family to the Osterfields, and why Thorne seemed to hate her father with such cold precision. What she couldn't know was that by the time she uncovered the truth, everything she believed about herself and her past would be shattered forever. The Osterfield estate materialized through the morning fog like something from another century. Wrought iron gates parted silently as the car approached, revealing a sprawling mansion of pale stone perched on the Newport cliffs, waves crashing against the rocks below. Eloan pressed her palm against the car window, her heart hammering. This would be her prison for the next year. The driver, silent throughout the 6-hour journey from Maine, finally spoke. "Mr. Osterfield is not in residence today. Mrs. Hayes will show you to your quarters." He delivered this information without emotion, as if accustomed to bringing unwilling guests to his employer's domain. The car stopped at the front entrance, where a severe-looking woman in her late 60s waited. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, but her eyes held an unexpected warmth. "Miss Blackwood," she greeted, extending her hand. "I'm Meredith Hayes, the estate manager." Eloan took the offered hand. "Thank you for meeting me, Mrs. Hayes." "Meredith, please." She gestured for Eloan to follow her inside. "Let me show you where you'll be staying." The interior of the mansion was even more imposing than its exterior. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, artwork that belonged in museums. Nothing like the cozy cottage where Eloan had grown up. "How many people live here?" Eloan asked, her voice echoing slightly in the vast foyer. "Just Mr. Osterfield, though he travels frequently. His sister Laurel visits when her health permits. There's a staff of 12, including security, but most don't live on site." They ascended a grand staircase to the east wing, where Meredith opened a door to reveal a suite that was larger than Eloan's entire home in Maine. "Your accommodations," Meredith said. "Mr. Osterfield instructed that you be comfortable." Comfort was an understatement. The suite included a bedroom with an ocean view, a sitting area, and a private bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in. Eloan set down her worn suitcase, feeling woefully out of place. "It's very generous." "Mr. Osterfield can be generous when it suits him," Meredith said with an unreadable expression. "Dinner is at 7 in the small dining room. Mr. Osterfield will return tomorrow morning and expects you ready for work at 8 sharp." As Meredith turned to leave, Eloan's mother's locket slipped out from beneath her blouse, catching the older woman's eye. Meredith froze, her expression changing to one of shock. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eloan's hand flew to the locket. "It was my mother's." "What?" Meredith composed herself quickly. "It's nothing. Just reminds me of a piece I once saw. Forgive me." She headed for the door, then paused. "A word of advice, Miss Blackwood. Mr. Osterfield values precision and discretion. He dislikes displays of emotion. If you wish to survive your time here, learn to guard your feelings." After Meredith left, Eloan explored her room, eventually discovering a closet filled with new clothing in her size. Simple, expensive pieces suitable for a personal assistant. The implicit message was clear. Raymond Blackwood's daughter wasn't adequately equipped for life in Thorne Osterfield's world. She spent the rest of the day wandering the permitted areas of the mansion, memorizing its layout. The library particularly captivated her, with its floor-to-ceiling shelves and leather-bound volumes. That evening, dining alone at a table meant for 12, Eloan overheard 2 staff members talking in the kitchen. "She's the one whose father owes Mr. Osterfield?" a young woman's voice asked. "Among other things," replied a male voice. "Mr. Lindstrom has been in contact with her father for years. This debt is just the culmination." Eloan froze. Her father had mentioned Garrett Lindstrom's calls beginning long before the gambling debts. What was the connection? Before she could hear more, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't trust Osterfield. I can help you escape this arrangement. Meet me tomorrow. GL. Garrett Lindstrom." Thorne's business partner was reaching out behind his back. But why? Eloan deleted the message, unsettled. She hardly slept that night, haunted by her father's warnings and Meredith's reaction to her mother's locket. Morning came too quickly. At precisely 7:30 a.m., Eloan made her way to Thorne's office in the West Wing, dressed in one of the provided outfits, a simple gray dress and low heels, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her mother's locket tucked safely out of sight. The office door was ajar. Inside, Thorne Osterfield stood by the window, his tall frame silhouetted against the morning light, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what Raymond Blackwood claims, Garrett. The man's a pathological liar." His voice was cold. "His daughter is here now. That's all that matters." Eloan's breath caught. Thorne turned. sensing her presence. "We'll discuss this later," he said into the phone, disconnecting the call. "Miss Blackwood, you're early." "Good." Up close, Thorn Osterfield was even more intimidating. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, his dark hair showing traces of silver at the temples despite being only in his mid-30s. His face might have been handsome if not for the hardness in his eyes. "Your responsibilities are outlined here," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "You'll manage my schedule, correspondence, and travel arrangements. You'll accompany me to meetings when required. You'll have access to the information necessary to perform these duties and nothing more." Aloan took the folder. "And my personal time? You're free to use the estate grounds and facilities when not working. You may not leave the property without permission. You may not discuss your arrangement with anyone. Your phone and internet usage will be monitored." "That's imprisonment, not employment," Aloan objected. A cold smile touched his lips. "Would you prefer I call the authorities about your father's fraud instead?" Aloan bit back her retort. "What fraud specifically? You've never said what my father did besides owing you money." Thorn's expression darkened. "Ask him yourself. Though I doubt Raymond Blackwood has ever told the truth in his life. You clearly have some history with my father beyond this debt. Not with just your father." The words hung in the air, loaded with meaning. Before Aloan could press further, Thorn gestured to a desk in the corner. "That will be your workstation. I suggest you familiarize yourself with my calendar. I have a board meeting at 11 that you'll attend." The conversation was clearly over. As Aloan turned to her assigned desk, she caught sight of a portrait on the wall, a young woman with auburn hair like her own, her smile hauntingly familiar. She almost stumbled. The woman could have been her mother's sister, or Aloan herself in a few years. Thorn noticed her reaction. "Is something wrong, Miss Blackwood?" "No," she lied, heart racing. "Nothing at all." 2 weeks into her captivity at the Osterfield estate, Aloan had established a routine. Wake at 6, exercise in the private gym, breakfast alone, then work in Thorn's office from 8 until whenever he dismissed her, sometimes as late as 9 in the evening. Thorn was demanding but fair as an employer. He expected perfection and noticed every error, but also acknowledged competence. When Aloan reorganized his chaotic filing system, he'd offered a simple, "well done," that somehow felt more valuable than effusive praise would have from anyone else. What he never did was explain the portrait of the auburn-haired woman or why he seemed to harbor such hatred for her father. On this particular afternoon, Aloan was transcribing meeting notes when the office door burst open, revealing a young woman in her early 20s. She had Thorn's eyes but softer features, her complexion pale beneath a stylish headscarf. "Surprise, big brother." The woman grinned, then noticed Aloan. "Oh, you must be the new assistant. I'm Laurel." Before Aloan could respond, Thorn was on his feet. "Laurel, you're supposed to be in Boston for treatment. What are you doing here?" "Checking myself out. I'm tired of being poked and prodded." Laurel flopped into a chair, revealing a glimpse of a medical bracelet on her wrist. "The new medication makes me feel worse than the condition does." Thorn's expression transformed in a way Aloan wouldn't have believed possible. The coldness melted, replaced by concern. "Have you taken your medication today? When was your last transfusion?" "Yes, Mother." Laurel rolled her eyes, then turned to Aloan. "He's been like this since I was diagnosed at 12. Thorn suspended his entire life to make sure I got the best care." "Laurel," Thorn warned, but his sister ignored him. "Congenital Osterfield cardiomyopathy. Only affects our family. Very exclusive." She tapped her chest. 1 in 4 Osterfields develop it. "Lucky me." Aloan's professional mask slipped. "I'm sorry. That sounds difficult." "It's manageable with the right care," Thorn interjected, shooting Aloan a look that clearly said not to encourage his sister. "Which costs a fortune," Laurel added. "Hence my brother's obsession with the company's success, though he was driven even before my diagnosis." She studied Aloan curiously. "Has he told you about the family curse yet?" "That's enough," Thorn said sharply. "Aloan, please get my sister settled in the East Wing. Have Mrs. Hayes prepare her usual room." Dismissed, Aloan led Laurel through the mansion. "Sorry about that," Laurel said once they were alone. "Thorn hates when I talk about our family's dirty laundry." "It's fine. I understand privacy." Laurel laughed. "Do you?" "Because everyone on staff knows why you're here. Your father's debt, the contract. It's not exactly a state secret." Aloan's cheeks burned. I wasn't aware I was the subject of gossip. No offense, but when a reclusive billionaire suddenly has a gorgeous young woman living in his house under unusual circumstances, people talk. Laurel studied her. Though I didn't expect you to look so much like. Like who? Eloan pressed when Laurel stopped abruptly. Never mind. Laurel waved dismissively. I'm tired. Which room did Thorne assign you? The blue suite in the east wing. Laurel's eyes widened. Really? That's interesting. Before Eloan could ask what was interesting about it, they arrived at Laurel's room. I'm right down the hall if you need anything, Eloan offered. I might take you up on that. I get bored easily. Later that evening, after helping Laurel settle in, Eloan returned to Thorne's office to find him on the phone, his tone unusually angry. She checked herself out, Garrett. No, I don't care about the board meeting. My sister's health comes first. He hung up when he noticed Eloan. Is Laurel comfortable? Yes. She seems tired but in good spirits. Thorne nodded, running a hand through his hair, a rare display of human stress. Thank you for assisting her. You're dismissed for the evening. Mr. Osterfield, Eloan hesitated. If I may ask, what exactly is congenital Osterfield cardiomyopathy? He studied her for a long moment. A rare genetic heart condition that only affects members of the Osterfield bloodline. It weakens the heart muscle progressively. Laurel was diagnosed at 12. The treatments are extensive. I'm sorry. That must be difficult for both of you. Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. It is. But we manage. He seemed about to say more when his phone rang again. You may go, Miss Blackwood. That night, a violent storm hit Newport. Eloan was in the library reading when the power went out, plunging the mansion into darkness. Minutes later, Thorne appeared with a flashlight. The backup generator should engage shortly. Are you all right? Yes, thank you. She was surprised by his concern. The staff quarters have emergency lighting, but this wing doesn't. Come with me to my office. There's a fireplace. She followed him through the darkened halls, lightning occasionally illuminating the mansion's grandeur in stark flashes. In his office, Thorne lit the fireplace with practiced ease, the flames casting his features in warm light, softening them, making him look younger, less forbidding. The storms knocked out the main power line, he explained, checking his phone. The generator only powers essential systems, including your sister's medical equipment, I hope? He glanced at her. Yes, Laurel's well-being is always my priority. She mentioned you put your life on hold when she was diagnosed. Thorne was silent for a moment, staring into the fire. Our parents were already gone. There was no one else. It was the first personal information he'd volunteered. Eloan ventured further. What happened to them? My father died of heart failure, the same condition Laurel has. My mother couldn't cope afterward. She took her own life when I was 22. Laurel was only 9. I'm so sorry. That's awful. Life is often awful, Miss Blackwood. The momentary softness vanished. I learned early that sentimentality is a luxury the responsible can't afford. Is that why you're so? She searched for a diplomatic word. Cold. He supplied it without rancor. I prefer focused. Emotion clouds judgment. It also makes us human. Being human is overrated. But his eyes, reflecting the firelight, betrayed a shadow of pain. Lightning crashed outside, followed immediately by thunder that shook the windows. Eloan jumped, instinctively moving closer to the fire and to Thorne. You're afraid of storms? He asked, his voice unexpectedly gentle. Not usually, but this one's intense. Another crash, another flinch. Embarrassed, Eloan laughed shakily. Sorry. When I was little, my dad told me thunder was just the angels moving furniture in heaven. My mother had just died, and it comforted me somehow. Thorne studied her. You lost your mother young too. I was 3. I barely remember her. Eloan touched her locket through her blouse, a habitual gesture she didn't realize she was making. Thorne noticed. What's that you're touching? Hesitantly, Eloan pulled out the locket. It was my mother's, the only thing I have of hers. Thorne stepped closer, his expression unreadable. May I? She nodded. He examined the locket without touching it, his face inches from hers. It's beautiful work. Oh, my father says it's been in my mother's family for generations. Something flickered in Thorne's eyes. He stepped back abruptly. You should keep it hidden. Why? Before he could answer, the lights flickered on. The generator had engaged. Power's back, Thorne said unnecessarily. You should get some rest, Miss Blackwood. Tomorrow will be busy. Laurel's doctors will be visiting. The moment of connection was broken. As Aloan turned to leave, she glimpsed again the portrait of the auburn-haired woman. This time, she was certain the woman wore a locket identical to hers. "Mr. Osterfield," she said at the door. "One more question, if I may. The woman in that portrait, who is she?" His face hardened. "My father's sister, Eleanor. She betrayed the family and was cut off. She died young." Eleanor, her mother's name. "Good night, Miss Blackwood," Thorne said firmly. Aloan returned to her room, her mind racing. Her father had said her mother came from money and chose him over her family. Could it be possible? Was Eleanor Osterfield her mother? It would explain Thorne's hatred for her father, Meredith's reaction to her locket, and Laurel's comment about Aloan resembling someone. But if true, why had her father kept it secret? And more importantly, what did it mean for Aloan's deal with Thorne Osterfield, a man who might, impossibly, be her cousin? The day after the storm, doctors arrived at the Osterfield estate to examine Laurel. Aloan found herself unexpectedly included in these proceedings when Laurel requested her presence. "Miss Blackwood has been very helpful," Laurel explained to her brother when he frowned at the suggestion. "I'd like her there." Dr. Winters, a cardiologist who'd been treating Laurel for years, reviewed her latest test results in the mansion's medical suite, a room Aloan hadn't known existed until now. "Your numbers aren't where I'd like them to be," Dr. Winters said, her expression concerned. "The medication should be showing better results by now." "I told you it makes me feel worse," Laurel muttered. "We may need to consider more aggressive treatment options," Dr. Winters continued, addressing Thorne now. "There's a new experimental procedure at Boston Memorial that's showing promise for CAC patients." "Cost is no object," Thorne said immediately. "Whatever she needs." While they discussed treatment plans, Aloan studied the medical charts displayed on Dr. Winters' tablet. Without thinking, she spoke up. "Have you tried adjusting the beta-blocker dosage? The current level seems high for someone of Laurel's weight." The room fell silent. Dr. Winters looked at her with surprise. "Are you familiar with cardiac pharmacology, Miss Blackwood?" Aloan herself wasn't sure why she'd noticed the issue. "No, not really. It seemed obvious looking at the numbers." Dr. Winters studied her with newfound interest. "You have good instincts. It's actually something we're considering." She turned to Thorne. "Does heart disease run in her family as well?" Thorne's expression darkened. "Miss Blackwood is my employee, not a patient." "Of course." Dr. Winters nodded, but continued to glance curiously at Aloan throughout the remainder of the appointment. When the doctor finally left, Thorne pulled Aloan aside in the hallway. "How did you know about the medication dosage?" he demanded. "I don't know. I just looked at the chart, and it seemed wrong. People don't just intuitively understand complex cardiac medications, Miss Blackwood. Maybe I read about it somewhere and forgot," she offered weakly. The truth was, she had no explanation for her insight. Thorne studied her with suspicious eyes. "From now on, you're not to attend Laurel's medical appointments." "But she asked for me, and I'm countermanding that request. My sister's health is not your concern." The coldness was back in full force, erasing any warmth that had developed during the power outage. Aloan returned to her duties, troubled by Thorne's reaction and her own inexplicable knowledge. Later that week, Aloan was organizing files in Thorne's office when she discovered an old newspaper clipping tucked into a folder. The headline read, "Osterfield heiress elopes with unknown musician." The grainy photo showed a young woman who could only be Eleanor Osterfield, the same woman from the portrait, wearing Aloan's locket, alongside a handsome man who resembled a younger version of her father. The article was dated 25 years ago, which aligned with her mother's relationship with her father. Aloan quickly photographed the clipping with her phone before returning it to the folder, her heart pounding. Her suspicions were right. Eleanor Osterfield was almost certainly her mother, which made Thorne her cousin. But he clearly didn't know, or was pretending not to know. Why else would he have made this arrangement with someone of his own blood? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Laurel stood in the doorway, looking pale but determined. "I've been looking for you. Do you have a moment?" Aloan slipped her phone into her pocket. "Of course." Laurel led her to a small sunroom overlooking the ocean. "I wanted to apologize for dragging you into my medical drama. Thorne can be overprotective. It's fine. I hope you're feeling better." "I'm never really better," Laurel said with remarkable frankness. "This condition doesn't improve." The best we can hope for is slowing its progression. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've had time to accept it. Laurel settled into a wicker chair. What I haven't accepted is how it's warped my brother. He was different before our mother died. Warm, even funny sometimes. Now all he cares about is protecting me and building the company. He loves you very much. Love shouldn't turn you into a fortress. Laurel studied Eloan. He's different around you, you know? Less rigid. Eloan laughed. I think we're talking about different people. I know my brother. He watches you when you're not looking. Laurel leaned forward. There's something I need to tell you. About your mother. Eloan's breath caught. What about her? Before Laurel could answer, Meredith appeared at the doorway. Miss Osterfield, your brother is looking for you. Your medication. Laurel sighed. The warden calls. We'll talk later, okay? That evening, Eloan accompanied Thorne to a charity event at the Newport Art Museum. Her first time leaving the estate since her arrival. She wore a simple black dress from the wardrobe provided for her, feeling like an imposter among Newport's elite. Stay close, Thorne instructed as they entered the gala. You're here to manage my schedule, not socialize. Despite his warning, Eloan found herself separated from Thorne when he was pulled into a conversation with investors. She wandered toward a display of local artists, admiring a seascape that reminded her of her own abandoned paintings. Beautiful, isn't it? Said a voice beside her. The artist captured that particular Newport light perfectly. The man was in his late 30s, handsome in a polished way, with an easy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. It reminds me of home, Eloan replied. I grew up near the coast in Maine. Ah, a fellow New Englander. I'm Garrett Lindstrom. He extended his hand, then added with a knowing smile. But I think you already know that. Eloan tensed, remembering her father's warning and the text message she'd received. Mr. Osterfield's business partner. And you're the famous Eloan Blackwood. Your arrival at the Osterfield estate has generated quite a bit of curiosity. I'm just Mr. Osterfield's assistant. Garrett chuckled. We both know that's not the whole story. He lowered his voice. Did you receive my message? About helping you. I did. And I'm not interested. You don't even know what I'm offering. I know enough to be cautious of someone who contacts me behind my employer's back. Garrett's smile tightened. Smart girl. But Thorne isn't just your employer, is he? He's your jailer. I can help you break the contract without legal repercussions for your father. Why would you do that? Let's just say Thorne and I have different visions for the future of Osterfield Industries. Garrett handed her a business card. Think about it. You don't belong here, Eloan. You're a pawn in a game that started long before you were born. Before she could respond, a woman's voice cut through the ambient noise of the gala. Garrett, darling, I've been looking everywhere for you. The newcomer was strikingly beautiful, tall, blonde, and exuding the confident aura of old money. She slipped her arm through Garrett's, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Vanessa Harrington. She introduced herself to Eloan with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And you must be Thorne's new assistant. The way she emphasized the last word made its implied meaning clear. Eloan Blackwood, she replied evenly. Vanessa's perfectly arched eyebrows rose slightly. Blackwood, as in Raymond Blackwood's daughter? You know my father? Only by reputation. Vanessa exchanged a loaded glance with Garrett. How fascinating that you've ended up working for Thorne. Small world. Across the room, Eloan spotted Thorne scanning the crowd, his expression darkening when he saw her with Garrett and Vanessa. He strode toward them purposefully. There you are, he said to Eloan, completely ignoring Garrett and Vanessa. We're needed at the podium. Thorne, Vanessa purred. Aren't you going to say hello to your ex-fiancé? It's been months. Thorne's jaw tightened. Vanessa, Garrett, if you'll excuse us, the governor is waiting. As Thorne led her away, his hand firm on her lower back, Eloan felt Garrett's and Vanessa's eyes following them. Stay away from those two, Thorne muttered once they were out of earshot. Why? What's the history there? Vanessa and I were engaged briefly last year. It was a mistake. As for Garrett, he hesitated. Despite being my business partner, his loyalty is questionable. Then why work with him? Because sometimes it's better to keep your enemies close. Thorne stopped, turning to face her. Did Garrett approach you about breaking our contract? Eloan was startled by his directness. How did you know? Because I know Garrett. What did he offer? A way out without consequences for my father. Thorne's expression hardened. And did you accept? No. She met his gaze directly. Despite everything, I honor my agreements. Something shifted in his eyes. Respect, perhaps. Good. Because Garrett Lindstrom never offers something for nothing. Whatever he promised, there would be a hidden cost. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and polite small talk. Thorne kept Aloan by his side, introducing her simply as my assistant without explanation. For her part, Aloan played the role perfectly, anticipating his needs and managing the flow of conversations with unexpected skill. On the drive back to the estate, Thorne was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, as they turned through the gates, he spoke. "You did well tonight. Better than I expected." Coming from him, it was high praise. "Thank you. Next week, there's a fundraiser for cardiac research. Laurel insists on attending, despite my objections. I'd like you to help organize our participation and accompany us." "Of course." He hesitated, then added, "The event benefits the research program that might help Laurel. It's important to me." "I understand. I'll make sure everything is perfect." Their eyes met briefly in the darkened car. For a moment, Aloan glimpsed vulnerability behind his austere facade. Back at the mansion, as they walked through the silent foyer, Thorne paused. "Aloan," he said, using her first name for the first time. "Whatever Garrett or Vanessa might tell you about me or your father, remember that they have their own agendas." "Why would they have agendas involving me? I'm nobody." Thorne studied her face for a long moment. "You really don't know, do you?" he murmured, almost to himself. "Know what?" He shook his head. "Good night, Miss Blackwood." As Aloan prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ask your father about August 15th, 25 years ago. Ask him what really happened to Eleanor Osterfield." Vanessa Harrington had just entered the game, and Aloan was beginning to fear she was the prize everyone was competing for, without knowing why. The Waldorf Foundation's Heart Gala transformed the Newport Grand Hotel into a glittering showcase of wealth. For the past week, Aloan had meticulously organized the Osterfield family's participation in the event, securing their prominent table placement and arranging Thorne's speaking engagement. Standing at the entrance in a midnight blue gown, Aloan scanned the crowd for Thorne and Laurel, who were running late due to Laurel's medical treatment. "They're 5 minutes out," Meredith informed her, elegant in a simple black dress. "You've done remarkably well with this event." He's impressed, though he won't say it. The older woman hesitated, then touched Aloan's arm. "Be careful tonight. There are people here who wouldn't want to see you succeed." When Thorne and Laurel arrived, his eyes found Aloan immediately. Something flickered in his expression, appreciation, perhaps, though he quickly masked it. "You look lovely," Laurel said, embracing Aloan. "Doesn't she, Thorne?" "Very professional," he replied neutrally, though his eyes lingered. For the next hour, the evening progressed smoothly until Vanessa Harrington approached Aloan. "You play the role of devoted assistant quite convincingly," Vanessa said. "One might almost forget you're here under duress." "I'm simply doing my job, Miss Harrington. Please, call me Vanessa. After all, we share a connection." She lowered her voice. "Did you ask your father about that date I mentioned?" "No, and I don't intend to." "This is no game," Vanessa interrupted. "It's about justice. Did you know your father was driving the car the night Eleanor Osterfield died?" The words hit Aloan like a physical blow. "That's a lie. My mother died of pneumonia." Vanessa's smile was cold. "Is that what Raymond told you? How convenient for him." In the elegant powder room later that evening, Vanessa showed Aloan a yellowed newspaper clipping. "Fatal collision claims Osterfield heiress." The driver's name was listed as Raymond Blackwood, with passenger Eleanor Osterfield Blackwood pronounced dead at the scene. "This could be forged," Aloan said, though her voice betrayed her doubt. "Ask Thorne why he really brought you here," Vanessa replied. "Look in a mirror, Aloan. You're the spitting image of Eleanor. The woman whose death destroyed the Osterfield family. The woman your father killed." The drive back to the estate was tense. Laurel had dozed off, leaving Thorne and Aloan in uncomfortable silence. "You spoke with Vanessa," he finally said. "She showed me an accident report about my mother." Thorne's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He pulled the car onto a scenic overlook, cutting the engine. "Eleanor was my father's younger sister," he finally said. "When she met your father at a music festival, it was supposed to be a summer romance. But she fell hard for his charm. They eloped," Aloan said, "against everyone's wishes. My father disowned her. But Eleanor didn't care. Then she got pregnant with you. And suddenly your father realized he'd married into money he couldn't access. That's not fair. My father loved my mother. Did he? Then why was he driving drunk the night she died? Thorne turned to her. After Eleanor died, Raymond showed up at the funeral with you, claiming Eleanor had wanted to reconcile. He asked for financial support for Eleanor's child. My father refused. If you hate him so much, why bring me here? Because you're Eleanor's daughter. My blood. I needed to know what kind of person you are. And if I'd failed your test? You haven't. Yet. But I'm still not convinced you didn't know about your connection to us. Back at the mansion, Eloan found Meredith in the library with a photo album. You knew who I was from the beginning, Eloan said. Since the moment I saw that locket. Meredith showed her a wedding photo of Eleanor in a simple white dress, her auburn hair crowned with wildflowers, next to Raymond Blackwood looking at his bride with adoration. Before Eloan could learn more, the library door burst open. Vanessa and Garrett entered, followed by Thorne and Laurel. I invited them, Laurel said. It's time, Thorne. No more secrets. This doesn't concern them, Thorne growled. Doesn't it? Vanessa laughed. Your assistant is actually your first cousin, the daughter of the woman whose death tore your family apart. And you've been keeping her like a prisoner while investigating her. Is that true? Eloan asked Thorne. Was this all about revenge? Oh, we're just getting started, Garrett added. He's known about Eloan for years. He orchestrated this whole scenario, manipulating her father's gambling debts, creating the conditions for this contract. In the chaos that followed, Eloan slipped away. Outside, rain had begun to fall, but she didn't care. She ran down the long driveway toward the gates, her elegant gown becoming soaked. A car pulled alongside her, Garrett at the wheel. Get in, he called. I'll take you wherever you want to go. Desperate to escape, Eloan climbed in beside the man her father had warned her about, the man Thorne considered his enemy. As they drove away from the Osterfield estate, lightning illuminated Thorne's figure standing in the rain at the end of the driveway, watching them disappear into the storm. Rain lashed against the windshield as Garrett drove away from the Osterfield estate. The wipers struggled against the downpour, matching the rhythm of Eloan's racing heart. Where are we going? She finally asked, her voice hollow. My place in Providence for now. You need time to process. Garrett's tone was surprisingly gentle. Thorne had no right to keep you in the dark about your own identity. Did everyone know except me? The humiliation stung worse than the betrayal. Not everyone. Vanessa only discovered it recently while researching Thorne's family for our wedding. That's when she found the connection between Eleanor Osterfield and Raymond Blackwood. Headlights from an oncoming truck momentarily blinded them. Garrett swerved sharply to avoid a fallen branch, sending the car hydroplaning across the rain-slicked road. Eloan screamed as they spun, the world becoming a blur of rain and darkness before the sickening crunch of metal meeting guardrail. Then silence. Pain. Darkness. Eloan awoke to the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors. A fluorescent light buzzed overhead, harsh against her pounding head. Her body felt impossibly heavy, her left arm immobilized in a cast. You're awake. A nurse appeared at her bedside, adjusting something on the force stand. You gave everyone quite a scare. What happened? Her voice was a rasp. Car accident. You've been unconscious for nearly 36 hours. Concussion, broken arm, 3 cracked ribs. You're lucky to be alive. The driver? Mr. Lindstrom? Minor injuries. He was released yesterday. The nurse checked Eloan's vitals. You have a visitor who's been waiting. A Mr. Osterfield. Shall I send him in? Thorne. The events of the gala crashed back. The revelations, the humiliation. No, Eloan said firmly. I don't want to see him. He's been here since you were admitted. Barely left the waiting room. I don't care. Tell him to leave. After the nurse departed, Eloan stared at the ceiling, hot tears sliding into her hair. Everything she believed about herself, about her family, was a lie. She was Eleanor Osterfield's daughter. Her father had been driving drunk when her mother died. And Thorne, her own cousin, had orchestrated this elaborate scheme to what? Test her? Punish her? The door opened again, but instead of the nurse, Meredith Hayes entered carrying a worn leather satchel. I thought you might need a friendly face, the older woman said, pulling a chair beside the bed. How are you feeling? Like my life is a lie. Meredith nodded, understanding in her eyes. I've brought something for you. She placed the satchel on the bed. I should have given you these years ago, but I promised your mother I'd wait until the time was right. You knew my mother well. We grew up together. I was her lady's maid before I became the estate manager. When she eloped with your father, I was the only staff member who kept in touch." Meredith opened the satchel, removing a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon. "Eleanor left these with me before the accident. She knew things were deteriorating with your father. She wanted you to have them someday." With trembling fingers, Eloan opened the first letter. Her mother's handwriting flowed across the page, elegant yet bold, just like the woman in the photographs. "My dearest Eloan, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. First, know that I love you more than life itself. Second, know that despite what others may tell you, your father loved me too, though love isn't always enough to save us from ourselves." For the next hour, Eloan read through her mother's letters, accounts of Eleanor's life, her estrangement from her family, her passionate love for Raymond, and her growing concerns about his recklessness and drinking. The final letter revealed Eleanor's intention to reconcile with the Austerfields, not for money as Thorne believed, but so her daughter would know her family, particularly after Eleanor had begun experiencing symptoms that matched the Austerfield family's cardiac condition. "She never knew she carried the same heart condition as Laurel," Meredith explained. "It manifests differently in women, often later in life. She was planning to see the family doctor the week after she died." "Does Thorne know about these letters?" "No. Eleanor made me promise they were for you alone." A soft knock interrupted them. Laurel stood in the doorway, pale but determined. "The nurse said you didn't want visitors, but I thought." She hesitated. "I brought your locket. It was found at the accident scene." Laurel placed the necklace on the bedside table. "Thorne doesn't know I'm here. He's been destroyed by this. I've never seen him like this." "Good," Eloan said bitterly. "He lied to me about everything." "Not everything," Laurel countered. "And not for the reasons you think." She sat on the edge of the bed. "The doctors who treated you, they found something. About your heart." Eloan felt a chill. "What about it?" "You have it too. A milder form of our condition. It's why you instinctively knew about my medication." Laurel took her hand. "Your family, Eloan. Whether Thorne handled this terribly or not, you're an Austerfield." After Laurel left, Eloan stared at the locket, at her mother's letters, at the medical chart hanging at the foot of her bed. Her entire identity had been rewritten in the span of days. Outside her room, raised voices drew her attention. "She doesn't want to see you," the nurse was saying firmly. "I just need 5 minutes." Thorne's voice, stripped of its usual composure. "I'm sorry, Mr. Austerfield. The patient has been clear. Perhaps tomorrow." Footsteps retreated, followed by silence. Eloan closed her eyes, torn between fury and an inexplicable emptiness at the thought of Thorne walking away. She didn't see him watching from outside her room, his normally impassive face etched with regret, his hand pressed against the window separating them, a man finally realizing what he stood to lose. 3 days after the accident, Eloan checked herself out of the hospital against medical advice. She couldn't bear another moment in that sterile room, caught between Thorne's persistent attempts to see her and her own turbulent emotions. She didn't return to the Austerfield estate. Instead, she used the small emergency fund she'd saved before coming to Newport to check into a modest motel near the waterfront. Her broken arm and bruised body made everything difficult, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional turmoil. On her second night at the motel, a knock came at her door. Expecting the food delivery she'd ordered, Eloan opened it without checking the peephole. Thorne Austerfield stood in the hallway, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his jaw bore several days' worth of stubble. "How did you find me?" she demanded, not inviting him in. "I own half of Newport." It wasn't difficult. Despite his haggard appearance, his voice maintained its usual composure. "May I come in? Please." The please surprised her enough that she stepped aside, allowing him to enter the small room with its faded wallpaper and outdated furnishings. "You shouldn't have left the hospital," he said, eyeing her cast and the way she winced when she moved. "You shouldn't have lied to me about being my cousin." Thorne didn't deny it. "I deserve that. And your anger. What do you want, Thorne? To make sure I won't sue you for keeping me as an indentured servant? Or to check if I've contacted the press about Newport's most eligible bachelor exploiting his long-lost cousin?" "I want to apologize," he said simply, "and to explain, if you'll let me." Eloan sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. You're 5 days too late for explanations. I know. Thorn remained standing, his tall frame making the room feel even smaller. When I first discovered who you were, I was consumed by the past, by what your father did to my family. He didn't kill my mother on purpose. No, but he was drunk, reckless, and afterward, he tried to use you to get Osterfield money. Thorn's expression hardened. At least, that's what I believed. And now, he pulled an envelope from his jacket. Garrett Lindstrom has been manipulating your father for years. These are copies of communications between them dating back 5 years. Eloan accepted the envelope but didn't open it. Why would Garrett target my father? Because Richard Lindstrom, Garrett's father, was the attorney who handled Eleanor's disinheritance. He was also embezzling from the Osterfield Trust. Thorn paced the small room. When my father discovered the theft, he fired Richard and pressed charges. Richard killed himself rather than face prison. Garrett has been plotting revenge ever since. So he found my father and gradually entangled him in gambling debts, knowing Raymond's weakness, all while searching for a way to use you, Eleanor's daughter, as a weapon against me. Thorn's voice tightened. The contract, the debt. Garrett orchestrated all of it, pushing your father deeper into gambling, then connecting him with loan sharks tied to Osterfield investments. And Vanessa was engaged to me only to gain access to company information for Garrett. They've been working together for years. Eloan tried to process this new information. So my father wasn't trying to exploit the Osterfield connection? He made many mistakes, Eloan. But no, it appears Garrett manipulated him into situations where he would appear to be targeting us. The weight of this revelation settled uncomfortably. Why should I believe you now? In answer, Thorn placed a small recorder on the table. This is from my security team. They intercepted a conversation between Garrett and Vanessa after your accident. He pressed play. Garrett's voice emerged, tense and angry. She wasn't supposed to get hurt, just separated from Thorn long enough for us to execute the takeover. Vanessa's cool response followed, collateral damage. At least she's alive. Besides, it's worked perfectly. Thorn hasn't left her side at the hospital. The board meeting is tomorrow, and he'll miss it. That's all we needed. And when he discovers we've replaced those board members with our allies, by then it will be too late. Osterfield Industries will be under our control, and your father's memory will be avenged. Thorn stopped the recording. They're planning a hostile takeover of my company, using you as a distraction. Eloan stood, wincing at the pain in her ribs. Why are you telling me this? Because I need your help. And he hesitated, vulnerability showing through his composed facade. Because despite how this began, I care about what happens to you. You've barely treated me like a human being, let alone family. I know. I was wrong. The admission seemed to cost him. When I brought you to Newport, I thought I was protecting Laurel from another Raymond Blackwood scheme. I convinced myself I was justified in deceiving you because you must be deceiving me. But these past weeks, he faltered. You're nothing like what I expected. What did you expect? Someone calculating. Mercenary. Instead, I found someone kind. Talented. Someone who instinctively understood Laurel's condition because it runs in her blood too. Thorn's gaze met hers. Someone who reminds me of Eleanor at her best. The comparison to her mother softened something in Eloan. She opened the envelope he'd given her, scanning the documents inside. They painted a damning picture of Garrett's manipulation of her father over years. What about my medical condition? She asked. Laurel mentioned I have the same heart issue. A milder form, yes. Your mother was just beginning to show symptoms when she died. The doctors believe early intervention can prevent the progression Laurel experienced. So I'm truly an Osterfield? You always were. Thorn's expression softened. I should have welcomed you as family instead of treating you like a threat. The sincerity in his voice was unlike anything she'd heard from him before. The icy businessman was gone, replaced by a man stripped of his defenses. Let's say I believe you, Eloan said carefully. What is it you need my help with? Tomorrow's board meeting. Garrett and Vanessa think I'll miss it to stay at the hospital with you. They don't know you've checked out. So you want me as, what? A surprise witness. I want you as an Osterfield, claiming your rightful place in the family. Your mother's shares in the company were never reassigned after her disinheritance. Legally, they passed to you upon her death. Eloan's eyes widened. I own part of Osterfield Industries. 20%. More than enough to block Garrett's takeover attempt. Thorne's expression grew determined. But only if you're willing to claim them. The request hung between them, an olive branch, a business proposition, and something more complex she couldn't quite name. Why would I help you after everything? Not for me. For Laurel. Her treatments are funded through the company. If Garrett takes control, the implication was clear. Garrett Lindstrom wouldn't care about Laurel's medical needs. Revenge was his only motivation. And my father? Where does he fit in all this? Raymond is a pawn in Garrett's game, just as you were meant to be. Help me stop Garrett, and I'll ensure your father gets the treatment he needs for his gambling addiction. Thorne took a step closer. I can't change the past, Aloan, but I can try to make amends for my part in it. She considered his offer, turning the locket around her neck. Her last connection to a mother she barely remembered, but who had loved her enough to leave those letters. One condition, she finally said. After this is over, I want the truth. All of it. No more secrets between us. Relief washed over Thorne's face. You have my word. As Aloan nodded her agreement, she couldn't help feeling that something fundamental had shifted between them, the first tentative bridge across the abyss that had separated them from the beginning. What she couldn't yet admit, even to herself, was that beneath her anger and sense of betrayal lay another emotion altogether, one that had nothing to do with family ties or corporate intrigue, and everything to do with the man standing before her, finally seeing her for who she truly was. The Osterfield Industries boardroom fell silent as Aloan entered beside Thorne. 14 executives in expensive suits turned to stare, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. At the head of the table, Garrett Lindstrom froze mid-sentence, his confident smile faltering. What is the meaning of this interruption? He demanded, recovering quickly. This is a closed meeting. Not to shareholders, Thorne replied coolly. He guided Aloan to an empty seat. Allow me to introduce Eleanor Osterfield Blackwood's daughter and the holder of 20% of this company's voting shares. Murmurs rippled through the room. Vanessa Harrington, seated beside Garrett, paled visibly. This is absurd, Garrett sputtered. Eleanor Osterfield was disinherited. Her shares were redistributed decades ago. That's what my father wanted everyone to believe, Thorne acknowledged. But legally, the disinheritance was never formalized. The shares remained in trust, passing to her heir upon her death. He placed a document on the table. Our legal team confirmed it this morning. For the next hour, Aloan watched as the corporate drama unfolded. Thorne methodically dismantled Garrett's takeover attempt, exposing the falsified documents, the bribes to board members, and the elaborate scheme to use Raymond Blackwood as an unwitting accomplice. When the votes were finally tallied, Garrett and Vanessa's defeat was total. Security escorted them from the building, Garrett's parting threat. This isn't over, Osterfield. Falling hollow in the wake of his exposure. 6 months later, on the winter solstice, snow blanketed the grounds of the Osterfield estate. Inside, the once austere mansion glowed with warmth. Evergreen garlands draped the staircases, and fires crackled in every hearth. The transformation of the house mirrored the change in its inhabitants. In the newly renovated East Wing, Aloan put the finishing touches on a painting, a portrait of Laurel, whose health had stabilized under a pioneering treatment program funded by the Eleanor Osterfield Foundation for Cardiac Research. It's perfect, Laurel declared, examining her likeness. Her color was better these days, her energy improved. Though you've made me look too angelic. I painted what I see, Aloan replied, setting down her brush. The past months had brought extraordinary changes. After Garrett's arrest for corporate fraud, evidence emerged proving he had systematically manipulated Raymond Blackwood, even tampering with his drinks the night of Eleanor's fatal accident to ensure he was over the legal limit. While it didn't absolve her father entirely, it had opened the door to reconciliation. Raymond was now 4 months into a residential treatment program for gambling addiction, writing music again for the first time in years. His letters to Aloan were filled with remorse, but also with a renewed purpose she hadn't seen in him since childhood. As for Aloan herself, she had claimed not only her shares in Osterfield Industries, but also her place in the family. She divided her time between her artistic pursuits and learning the business alongside Thorne, whose sharp edges had softened considerably. Their relationship had evolved in unexpected ways. What began as cautious cooperation had deepened into mutual respect, then friendship, and finally something neither of them had anticipated, a connection that transcended family ties. "He's waiting for you in the garden," Laurel said with a knowing smile. "Don't keep him freezing out there too long." Aloan found Thorn by the stone fountain, now frozen into crystalline sculptures by winter's touch. Despite the cold, he seemed calm, at peace in a way she'd never seen before she entered his life. "Admiring your kingdom?" she teased, joining him on the bench. "Admiring how much better it is with you in it." He took her gloved hand in his. "I have something for you." From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, an antique diamond surrounded by sapphires that matched her eyes. "It was my grandmother's," he explained. "I've had it sized for you." Aloan's heart raced. "Thorn, I know it's complicated," he said quickly. "We're technically cousins, though distant enough that it's not a legal issue. And I understand if you think it's too soon, or too strange given how we began. But these past months have shown me what life can be when you let someone past your defenses. Are you asking what I think you're asking?" His smile, once so rare, came easily now. "Aloan Blackwood, I started by bringing you here as an enemy. Then I discovered you were family. Now I'm asking you to be something else entirely. My partner, my equal, my wife." She touched the locket at her throat, Eleanor's legacy, then looked at the ring that represented the Osterfield future. What would people say? They'll say the Osterfield curse is finally broken. That two broken family lines have been made whole again. His eyes held hers. "But what matters is what you say." Snow began to fall gently around them, each flake catching the moonlight like tiny stars descending to earth. In that perfect moment, Aloan felt her mother's presence, as though Eleanor was finally at peace seeing her daughter come home. "Yes," she whispered, closing the distance between them. "Yes." Their kiss sealed more than an engagement. It healed the wounds of the past, uniting two hearts that had found each other against impossible odds. Inside the mansion that would now truly be her home, the light from every window spilled onto the snow-covered gardens, banishing the shadows of secrets long buried, illuminating a future where both the Blackwood artistic spirit and the Osterfield strength would thrive together at last. 5 years later, laughter echoed through the Osterfield estate gardens. Where imposing hedges once created barriers, flower beds now bloomed in wild, artistic patterns. Children raced across the manicured lawn while guests mingled beneath white tents, champagne glasses catching the summer light. At the center of it all stood Aloan and Thorn Osterfield, watching their 3-year-old daughter Eleanor, Ellie for short, chase bubbles with her cousin, Laurel's 2-year-old son James. "She has your spirit," Thorn murmured, his arm around Aloan's waist. "And your determination," Aloan replied, smiling as their daughter stubbornly pursued a particularly elusive bubble. The annual Osterfield Foundation benefit had become Newport's most anticipated social event, raising millions for cardiac research and arts education. This year was special, the 5th anniversary of the foundation and the official unveiling of the new Osterfield Medical Center wing dedicated to treating genetic heart conditions. Across the lawn, Laurel chatted animatedly with donors. Her health had stabilized thanks to treatments developed through the foundation's research. Beside her stood her husband, Dr. Michael Chun, the cardiologist who had pioneered the therapy, now helping both Laurel and Aloan manage their condition. Raymond Blackwood sat at a piano set up near the garden pavilion, his fingers creating melodies that floated across the grounds. Sober for 4 years now, he had found his way back to music, composing pieces that the foundation used in their outreach programs. His relationship with Thorn remained complicated but respectful, two men connected by their love for Aloan and a shared determination to heal old wounds. Meredith Hayes, now semi-retired but still very much the heart of the household, supervised the event with her characteristic efficiency, beaming with pride at what the family had become. As the sun began to set, turning Newport's sky to watercolor shades of pink and gold, Thorn clinked his glass for attention. "I want to thank everyone for supporting the Eleanor Osterfield Foundation," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. 5 years ago, this foundation was born from a reconciliation that many thought impossible. Today, it stands as proof that even the deepest divisions can be healed. His eyes found Aloan's. "My wife taught me that true strength isn't found in walls we build to protect ourselves, but in the courage to let others in. Today, we've helped over 300 families affected by genetic cardiac conditions, and provided arts education to thousands of children. None of this would have been possible without Eleanor's daughter, who showed me what it means to have an open heart. Later, as stars appeared above Newport's coastline, Aloan and Thorn stood on the cliffs behind the mansion, the same spot where they had first truly spoken honestly to each other during that thunderstorm years ago. Do you ever think about how differently things could have turned out? Aloan asked, her head resting against his shoulder. Every day, Thorn admitted. If Garrett had succeeded, if you hadn't found your mother's letters, if we'd let pride keep us apart. If my tears hadn't melted your cold heart, she teased, referencing the melodramatic headline of a Society page article about their romance that had become a family joke. Thorn laughed, pulling her closer. I wasn't that cold. You were practically Arctic, she countered, stretching up to kiss him. Above them, a star streaked across the sky, a fleeting moment of brilliance against the infinite dark. Make a wish, Thorn whispered. Aloan closed her eyes, but found herself without anything to wish for. The broken pieces of her family's past had been transformed into something beautiful. The mansion that had once felt like a prison now sheltered love and healing. The man who had started as her adversary had become her greatest ally. I already have everything I could wish for, she said simply. As if in response, their daughter's voice called from the garden. Mama, Papa, come see. Hand in hand, they turned back toward the lights of home, leaving the shadows of the past where they belonged, acknowledged but no longer defining the path forward. In the distance, Newport's oldest lighthouse swept its beam across the darkened waters, a reminder that even on the blackest nights, light always finds a way through.